Hi, this is 213B, Part 5, the last and the briefest of our lecture videos. This is about the relationship between impulse and constraint, the tension between impulse and constraint. When you hear tension, you might think of Freudian's id versus ego, the marshmallow study with delay of gratification, and planfulness. Impulsivity is related to approach versus avoidance. That was this matrix, and we've also talked about that in a previous reading. Dual process models consider two routes of processing. There is reflexive processing and reflective. The second thing should say reflective, not reflection. Reflexive processing is also called reactive control. It's considered the more primitive type of emotional processing. It operates outside of consciousness. And in contrast, reflective processing of emotions is more deliberate, effortful, rational. It involves, or it has been called effortful control. So we've got reactive control versus effortful control. We've got reflexive processing versus reflective processing. Reflexive versus reflective. And reactive control could involve either action or inaction. Impulsive action or impulsive inaction. And this is an interesting thing. If you remember Sherry Johnson's overall, what I highlighted in blue, the overall picture here, big question is whether impulsive overreactivity to emotions may be a transdiagnostic feature, a diagnostic feature that applies to many different diagnoses. The broad spectrum of psychopathologies may be characterized by a more limited number of features. So emotional overactivity seeming to be a central tenet of many disorders. So now we have serotonin and serotonergic system functioning, which partly serves to decrease emotional reactivity and to increase constraint. So in other words, serotonin enhances the reflective, effortful, rational system. And they've demonstrated this with tryptophan depletion studies, which is found in Turkey. And tryptophan temporarily reduces serotonin. So lower serotonin function also implies a vulnerability to depression, which is associated with lethargy and an absence of behavioral engagement. Back to that impulsive inaction. So intense sadness is now the emotion we're dealing with. But intense sadness is a deactivating emotion, meaning it's a signal of failure. And an over-responsiveness to this emotion applied to sadness would promote behaviors that sadness ordinarily triggers, meaning inaction. So depressed behavior often reflects passivity and apparent difficulty in initiating action, which is interesting. There's also something about the interaction with dopamine, the dopaminergic system, that I didn't get into that here. If you are interested in these studies, you can go back to it or look at some of Sherry Johnson's previous studies. And then finally, for our discussion later, why does any of this matter? We had 3 readings today, and if you'd like to incorporate identity and self readings from earlier in the day, what do you want to talk about? Also, what time is it? How's it going? Where are you? Yeah, this could be applied to your classrooms. What's happening in your classrooms? How does this relate to grad school life? Because we're going to work with students, but we also are still students, or I was, you are. There's certain pressures that are experienced all the way down the food chain to the youngest years of schooling. Does any of this remind you of anything you've previously seen, heard, experienced, or read? That's the classic, like text to text, text to self, text to world connection. If you had to give a lecture on one of these slides or concepts or theories, which would it be? If you had to do a study on one of these concepts, theories, or slides. And then if you want, during the discussion, we could click back and generate examples of concepts, like the level of concreteness, approach versus avoidance, dual process modeling. We can do any of it when we meet later. Not sure if it's going to be audio or video, but please email me if you have any questions or needs in advance of our class period. Class period. Yikes. Session. Okay, bye-bye. See you later.